Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1017, January the 17th, 2020. Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in. And thank God it's Friday. Oh boy. Alrighty. Let's go ahead and get to the news of the day. Let's start right here. How about that? It looks like federal prosecutors are investigating whether James Comey, the former director of the Federal Bureau of I'm With Her, leaked classified information to reporters on the Rotten Reverend Clinton's investigation back in 2016. Specifically, the feds are looking at two news articles, the source of which was a Russian intelligence document. The document is Russian intelligence analysis of an email sent from Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz, who was the chair of the DNC, to an official at George Soros Open Society Foundation, Leonard Bernardo. Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz tells Bernardo in the email that Attorney General Lynch would make sure the probe into the Rotten Reverend Clinton's private server would not conclude with charges against Clinton. Now, this is I remember reporting on this a long time ago, like over 2 years ago when this first came up. And so now it seems to have found its way back onto the front burner, or now it's actually being investigated. And that's strange because, again, this originally broke. I mean, this story's old. I mean, this may even predate Spygate or my doing these TowerGate videos. It's something, I don't know why this was suddenly popped back up, but it might have something to do with Durham's investigation. Digging into various things might have sort of re-unearthed this and has put it back on the burner. Because, again, this is a fairly old story. Everything I just told you was reported on well over 2 years ago. And, of course, at that time, Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz and Bernardo had both made statements denying that they had ever communicated with one another. Now, again, these people are very tricky and they lie a lot, so it's possible that maybe they didn't have a direct conversation, but maybe they used an intermediary or someone else. But it's also possible that they actually did communicate directly and they're just lying. The very fact that federal prosecutors are now, for federal prosecutors to investigate something, they first will probe into it to determine whether or not it's worthy of being investigated. So this is what I think was going on a couple of years ago. But now we find out that they are actually investigating whether Comey did leak this classified information and how, in fact, this information made its way over to the George Soros Open Society Foundation and how this email found its way to these various people. And because it was classified intelligence information, it had to come from someone within the Federal Bureau of I'm With Her or possibly a CIA or someone like that. It certainly had to come from someone within the government who would have had access to this type of classified information. Now, of course, we know with all of the people involved in this kind of stuff that was going on, and is still going on, quite honestly, but it was especially going on back at that time, it could be a number of people. I'm not exactly why they're focused on James Comey. That is what we do not know. What is it? Why are they looking at James Comey? The fact that they have this email, the fact that they know that the email occurred, it was the source for the story, and again, we'd heard this allegation that it had something to do with Wasserman Schultz and this guy Bernardo. How James Comey got tied into this, I'm not exactly sure. Maybe it's the level of classification or the nature of the document or something like that is the reason for that. But they don't really say in the article. But there are two sources, according to this reporter, that the federal prosecutors are investigating whether Comey leaked classified information to these reporters on the Rotten Reverend Clinton investigation. And again, this was an email, and again, this was widely reported on back at the time, and we talked about it, that Attorney General Lynch, the email was basically Wasserman Schultz saying, hey, don't worry, Attorney General Lynch is going to make sure that the Right Reverend Clinton is not prosecuted. No prosecution is going to, or no charges are going to come out of this investigation into the Right Reverend Clinton's private server. And of course, no charges came from the investigation. Now, maybe that is why they're looking at Comey, because he is the one who came out and basically exonerated the Right Reverend Clinton. It also brings up, again, at that time, I think this story was being tied to the meeting on the tarmac, which is this what was discussed on the tarmac? Is that what they were talking about? Was that what Loretta Lynch was told by Bill Clinton? Hey, you better make sure that my wife isn't charged. You better make sure Comey does not charge my wife or whatever, because, hey, we've got this and this and this information on you or whatever, or Comey or someone. And that's how the Clintons play ball. So I think there's probably more going on here than what we see on the surface, and it could be something going on with the Durham investigation that's triggered this, or it could be something that is back with the Department of Justice. It may have been with Huber, and of course his office appears to be wrapping up what they're doing, but the DOJ itself, Main Justice, has not made a statement on wrapping up the investigation. That was just reported as far as what Huber is doing in what state's he in? Utah. And even that is being questioned by various people, saying, that report came from, I think, Washington Post or someone, that Huber had wrapped up the investigation. So still, there's a lot of, there's a lot of things we don't know, a lot of confusing information. But anyway, yeah, this is interesting. It just would pop its head back up and make its way onto the news wires. So I don't know. I don't know what's triggering this, and I don't know any more other than what I just told you, because that's all that's being reported in the story. So I don't know. It's an interesting little piece of news, and we'll just have to wait and see if there's anything more that comes out of it. But I assume Comey's being investigated for so many things, and one of them being leaking, that possibly in the course of investigating Comey and his leaks, they stumble across this. And that could be. So how they got back into this story, I'm not sure. There's several different ways that this could have come back to Comey being investigated. So I'm sure at some point this will all shake itself out. But right now, that's all the details we have. Pretty interesting piece of news, though. Well, today we had yesterday, we had a huge market surge. Again, the market up 267 points. And what's unusual about this is on the day that the Senate officially takes up the impeachment hearings, swears in the members, swears in the Chief Justice. And this should have been, a really big piece of news. This should generally be something that would rattle markets. This should generally be something that would make markets unsteady or what have you. But rather, what we get is a big boom day, and the market surges 267 points. And of course, what was going on at the same time? Well, the USMCA was going to be voted on and passed overwhelmingly. And so the news of the fact that the USMCA was going to be signed and was easily going to pass the Senate was far more important to the markets than the fact that the Senate has officially begun the impeachment process by swearing in the members and the judge. So this kind of puts things into perspective as far as the reality versus the fantasy. The Democrats' impeachment fantasy, when put up against an actual piece of reality, signing a major trade deal, we can see where people are and what their thinking is. That's what this tells us. And so again, this just shows that not that many people are paying attention. Not that many people take it seriously. I think it's becoming more and more obvious. Now, it's been obvious to us for a very long time, but it's becoming more and more obvious to, I think, just about everyone, including probably a lot of Democrats, that this entire impeachment thing is nothing but a show. It's a charade. It's a hoax. And I think that in hindsight, a couple weeks from now, when this thing's over and people look back at it in the rearview mirror, this is going to, as I said weeks ago, this is going to look very, very bad on Pelosi. It's going to damage her greatly politically. It's going to backfire on her, and all this talk about her being a genius and being so smart and all this, she's going to end up looking like a complete fool when people are looking at this in the rearview mirror. And despite the fact that the media has tried to portray her as being some sort of a tactical genius, she's going to look like a complete fool in the rearview mirror here in just a couple of weeks. And for people who are paying attention and who understand these things, like people on Wall Street, investors, serious people, they know this already, as we all do. So, yeah, this doesn't surprise me at all. And that's true. The big news of the day yesterday was not the fact that they swore in the judge and the members of the Senate for the impeachment hearings. No. The big news of the day was the fact that they signed this USMCA, voted on it in the Senate and got overwhelming number of votes for it. So, yes, this is the reality versus fantasy. And that's why Trump's going to win big in 2020. Because people who in the real world live in a real world, like all of us, we live in a world of reality. Whereas the Democrats, particularly Pelosi, lives in a fantasy world. And their fantasy world is about to come crashing down on them big time in 2020. Well, you're not going to believe this. The last couple of days we're talking about this nutbag communist field supervisor for the Bernie Sanders campaign who's been exposed by Project Veritas, this Kyle Jurek. So we're finding out today from Project Veritas that Jurek was in fact arrested on January 7th in Iowa. He was busted on some drug paraphernalia charges, and they found his pot, they found his pipes, they found his stuff. And so turns out, though, the big part of the story is that he was bailed out by the Bernie Sanders campaign regional director. He was bailed out by the Sanders campaign's regional director. You think the Sanders campaign regional director bailed Jurek out with his own money? I sure hope so. Because if he used campaign funds to bail out Jurek, oh, that's a big violation. That'll get you a big fine right there. And although this still isn't really being covered by the mainstream media, it's certainly making the rounds on Project Veritas, and I expect that there will be more. And that's probably why it's not being covered on mainstream media, because I know that they could very well show up and be targeted by Project Veritas. They already have been targeted once before, CNN specifically, but all these media networks are terrified of O'Keefe and Project Veritas because he's constantly got people, around them looking for an opening and an opportunity to break a big story on them. And they have so many skeletons in their closet, they're very, very susceptible to that sort of thing. So they really don't want to give Veritas credibility. Certainly, when they know that if they give Veritas credibility, then Veritas could very likely do a story on them. Wouldn't look very good. So, I think that this now is a question that's going to have to be answered, and this may actually put the story into the mainstream news. They won't be able to deny it or cover up the story or not cover the story, to say the least. They will not be able to not cover the story, because if it turns out that this campaign director used campaign funds to bail out Jurek, that in itself is a big news story. It will lead to certainly a campaign finance or a campaign violation. I don't think you're allowed to use campaign money to bail people out of jail. Don't think that that's in the rules. Pretty sure. So we'll keep following that story, and I'm sure there's more to come from Project Veritas. I'm sure. Well, it looks like Judge Sullivan has granted the 30-day extension to Michael Flynn so that he can submit his motion to withdraw his plea. So what will happen now, because the sentencing hearing would have been here, I think, Monday or Tuesday. So there wasn't time for the court to process the request or grant the request or whatever. So what will happen is the judge immediately granted a 30-day extension so that this could work itself out. So the 30-day extension's been granted by the judge. So now Flynn's attorney is going to submit more information to the court, and there's a certain date by which Sidney Powell has to do that. And then once that date is met and the information's been submitted to the court explaining why Flynn is justified in requesting a reversal to reverse his plea, then the government will be able to respond to Sidney Powell's evidence for why Flynn should be able to reverse his plea. Then, and they have a certain date by which they must respond, and then Sidney Powell, on behalf of Flynn, gets to respond to they get to respond to the government's response. So all these things, there's dates for each of these three things which has to happen, because it all has to happen within 30 days. Because in 30 days is when the new sentencing hearing date will be, and it's in February, sometime in February. So anyway, that looks like where the Michael Flynn thing is. The fact that the judge granted the 30-day extension means at least ways the initial motion is at least ways going to go forward. And now Sidney Powell will be able to present all her information. The government will have a chance to respond. Then Sidney Powell will have a chance to respond to that. And that will take us up to the sentencing hearing, if in fact it happens. Now the judge can make a ruling before then. Or I imagine it's possible that on the day of the hearing that they could announce it at that time. But probably they would do before then. Because that hearing is for a sentencing. So I would think that they wouldn't use a sentencing hearing to rule on another motion. I would think that there'll be a separate court date. So what you could see is that once all these filings and responses to the response have gone through, that I wouldn't be surprised to see him push the date another 30 days, because the court will probably grant, well, if the court decides to grant this, then they'll probably push it ahead for another hearing, and at that hearing they'll announce that they're going to accept Flynn's plea to reverse his guilty plea. So anyway, this Flynn thing is just incredible how this thing has got drug out. How many extensions have we had in the Flynn case? My God, I've lost count. Extension after extension after extension, and you just know there's got to be something bad wrong with this case just from the very fact that the way it's played itself out. And so we'll keep watching this, but I mean, you know, I don't think I've ever seen a case drag on like this and have so many extensions. It's just ridiculous, man. You know, that judge, I mean, in my mind, he just needs to make a damn decision in this case. But if you remember, it was this judge who a long time ago, in one of the hearings, asked Flynn to reverse his plea. Asked him, do you want to reverse your plea? And it was based on evidence that had come out at that point. And it was essentially almost like the judge suggesting, hey, you should reverse your plea. But he didn't. But now he has different attorneys. So I think that Flynn, a lot of the problem I think we have here is that I don't think Flynn had very good attorneys initially. And since he's gotten Sidney Powell, things have definitely changed a lot. I still think he's going to beat the case. I have a rough time understanding how Flynn could be charged. Well, now they're going for a different charge. Now they're going for something else. But the original charges, where this all began, was lying, and we know he didn't. It's in the government's own records. Not only that, the House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, said he and 2 or 3 other Republicans were witnesses in a hearing where they asked. And it's right there in the hearing notes. They were told, no, we don't think Flynn lied. So, I mean, this is crazy that this would continue to go on when the initial reason for all of this has already been proven to be untrue. Now they're off on FARA violations, or Flynn choosing to cooperate than not cooperating. I mean, it's just, you got to wonder what's going on here, and why they're holding on so tight to this case. And maybe delaying it is what they want. Maybe there's maybe because once Flynn is exonerated, he'll be able to, talk, basically. Right now he's probably being advised not to talk. So if you can keep him tied up in a legal matter, you keep him from talking. And this is the only thing that I can think of. It's the only thing that makes sense. I mean, the government doesn't like to drag these cases out like this. The more complicated that the case gets, the more difficult it is to get a conviction. So prosecutors don't like all this kind of stuff. So the only reason I can think of that they would continue to run this case the way they have and drag it out, because it doesn't really benefit the prosecution to do that, unless the only thing I can think of is they just want to make sure that Flynn has got the gag in his mouth. They don't want Flynn talking. But at some point, this case is going to come to an end, and he is going to talk, and probably write a book, and probably go on interviews, and various other things, or maybe file a counter lawsuit. So, it's just the craziest thing I've ever seen, man. It just needs to end. It really does. I can't believe the judge hasn't just thrown this whole thing out. What a mess. Well, it looks like Mr. Potato Head, John Brennan, has had to go on Twitter and correct himself from another lie he told. Brennan, Mr. Potato Head, had gone on Hardball with Chris Matthews and said that the note released by the bug-eyed fool, Adam Schiff, relating to Parnas, this note that everybody's probably seen, it written on hotel stationery, where he's suggesting that Trump knew everything he was doing and all that. Mr. Potato Head went on MSNBC Hardball with Chris Matthews and said that the note that was released by the bug-eyed fool was actually written by Trump. But right after he goes on Hardball with Chris Matthews and says the note was written by Trump, Parnas himself goes on Rachel Madcow's show and says that he, in fact, wrote the note. Parnas himself says he wrote the note. So that forced Mr. Potato Head to go on Twitter and correct his previous statement. And of course, Parnas goes on with Rachel Madcow, which should be the first indication right off the top that this dude has no credibility. If this guy had credibility, he wouldn't be on Rachel Madcow. Okay, so he goes on Madcow, and he says that everything he did was known and directed by Giuliani, Trump, A.G. Barr, DeGeneva and Tensing, Nunes, and Vice President Pence. All these people knew about what he was into. These people don't even know who the hell he is. They don't know who he is. He's a nobody. This guy's kind of like a Michael Avenatti, same type of guy. And a lot like Michael Cohen, a lot like John Dean. He's just another dead-ender that the Democrats are trying to drag out and use as some sort of a witness. When this guy is out on bail, he's just been charged. He's been charged with some fairly serious crimes involving campaign violations. He's just a hack, and Trump doesn't even know him. None of these people probably know much about him. Giuliani would, of course. Giuliani would know him and stuff like that. But this guy is. This is the star witness now. This is in fact, this may be why Madam Botox has been dragging this out, is waiting for Parnas to get charged so that he could get out on bail, so that he could come and give him this note that he wrote, and we don't even know when he wrote the note. And then they report on Madcow's show, said, well, he has confirmed. Huh? Parnas has confirmed what? He wrote the damn note. He's confirming he wrote the note? I mean, this is insanity. But then again, Madcow was just in court when she was getting sued, and her and MSNBC's legal defense was, hey, you can't sue Madcow for something she said on her show. She's not a news broadcaster. She doesn't do news. She doesn't do facts and truth and news. She's a talk show host. She's a TV host. She does entertainment, drama. That's what she does. So you can't take anything she says on her show as fact or news. That's not what she does. She's not a news person. She's not a fact person. That was their defense in court. So that's why he went on Madcow's show. Because if he had gone on another show that tries to pass himself off as news, like actual NBC or something like that, he wouldn't have been able to say what he just said. And so are they going to drag this guy into the Senate trial and put this guy out there just like they did with Michael Cohen, just like they did with John Dean? Yeah, that's their plan. This is their big star witness. This guy will get destroyed in hearings. If they put him out there, he will get destroyed. First of all, Attorney General Barr and the Department of Justice have already come out and made a statement saying what he's saying is absolutely 100% false. That Barr knows nothing about anything that Parnas is talking about. That Attorney General Barr has never had a conversation with Trump about any investigations in Ukraine. He's never had a conversation with DeGeneva and Tensing about Ukraine. He's never had a conversation with Vice President Pence about Ukraine or Nunes or any of these people, and they have no idea what this guy's talking about. Trump says he doesn't even really know the guy. He may have posed in a picture with him once, but doesn't know him. He poses in pictures with lots of people. Of course, Giuliani was using him as a source to try to get contacts in Ukraine, but Giuliani doesn't have any force of action in government. He's Trump's personal attorney. He can't make the government do anything. And Barr says he never spoken to Giuliani about anything having to do with Ukraine. We also have, on the other side of the equation, we also have Zelensky, the president in Ukraine, saying that nor he nor anyone in his staff administration has ever had a sit-down meeting, conversation, or interaction with Parnas. That he's basically a BSer, that he makes things up, that they don't know what the hell he's talking about either. So here we have this guy. He's just been charged with these crimes. He's out on bail. He shows up on Rachel Madcow's show, makes these allegations, all of which are being shot down already. I mean, and yet this is going to be the star witness. You know, this is going to be the guy they want to bring up in front of the Senate to make these claims. This shows you how bad it is, and why, as I said earlier, that in the rearview mirror, this is going to look really bad for Pelosi. I said it's going to be very damaging to her. She may survive and hold on to her speakership because she did what the left wanted her to do, which is pursue this misguided path of idiocy. But ultimately, she has tarnished her reputation forever, because it will go down in history forever that Trump was impeached. But it will also go down in history, there'll be a footnote there, that this was a total political witch hunt, and when all that's going to be exposed in the months to come after that, when that's all figured into the historical account, she is going to look like a complete idiot. Well, we had Dr. Michael Biden going on TV yesterday morning and saying that Epstein had burst capillaries in his eyeballs, which is an indication that he was strangled. Yeah, the Epstein story just refuses to go away. Everyone knows that this guy was whacked, okay? Everyone knows that this guy was straight up whacked. All right? We all know it. Okay? The entire story, he hung himself with the bed sheet by doing a somersault off the end of the bed, is nuts. It's nuts. Then we see the photo with literally with the scar. Looks like they took like a electrical cord or something, around his neck. A sheet might make some bruises, but you see a clear line around his neck like a cord or something. I mean, it's ridiculous. The bones that were broken in his neck, we know there were 3 bones broken in his neck, which hardly ever happens in that type of a suicide. It does happen rather often, most often, in a strangulation. So as more and more evidence, of course, we had the evidence last week. We didn't have time to talk about it because we were so busy about the video footage outside of his cell got deleted. Not just, and when you delete something, it's still on your hard drive. Oh no, it didn't just get deleted, from the memory in the computer. It got completely deleted, like wiped. Someone had to take extra care to make sure to get rid of that. Now, do you think they sit around at the jail up there and do that all day long? Completely blast things off like that? Of video footage, and why would they do it? Why would they erase any video footage? Especially in a case like this. I mean, when you look at so many facts around this Epstein thing, it's like everyone knows that the dude was whacked. Everyone knows that we're being given a huge line of bullshit. And the government knows that we know. But that's how they do it. It's in your face. It's how the deep state operates. It's, yeah, we're lying to you, and you know we're lying to you. Everybody knows we're lying to you. What are you going to do about it? We are the Department of Justice. Who's going to go after us? Nobody. We are it. We are the top of the food chain. That's why we can get away with anything. There is no accountability above the Department of Justice. None. Well, I told you 2 days ago about this lady, Natalie Edwards, this former Treasury official who pled guilty to conspiracy for leaking those documents about Manafort to BuzzFeed in an effort to hurt Trump. And, of course, she's pled guilty. Of course, she will be facing a sentencing hearing at some point, but something tells me that she's in really good shape, and she probably isn't going to have to worry about getting any real penalties. Why is that? Well, because the 3 prosecutors assigned to her case, one of them is Comey's daughter, Maureen. The other 2 are hardcore left-wing activist lawyers at the DOJ. They're basically all pretty much Democrat activists. Do you think that they're actually going to give her any serious, just like James Wolfe? What happened to him? He leaked the damn dossier. Highly classified. What did he get? Nothing. And what is Nicole Edwards or Natalie Edwards likely to get for her conspiracy charge? Well, because she's got 3 Democrat activist lawyers, including Comey's daughter, my guess is they'll give her community service or something. And she probably won't even have to do that. She'll walk. What do you want to bet? They're the Department of Injustice. The Department of the Obstruction of Justice, I believe I am now referring to them as. Well, Paul Sperry is reporting on his Twitter feed that Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz has been quietly revising key findings in his report on of course, his recent report on the Spygate thing. Now, Sperry doesn't say exactly what Horowitz is revising in his key findings or why. I did go over to the website myself, but there's really just nothing there. There's not really much on that website. So, anyway, he doesn't say, but I'm hoping we find out, but I'm going to take a wild guess. Obviously, Horowitz doesn't want to come and brief Congress or make it very public. He wants to keep it very quiet that he's revising key findings in his report. Well, my guess is he's learning because of the Durham investigation that a lot of things that are in his report, as I said, are wrong. A lot of things in his report are wrong, and he's realizing that. And he knows that when Durham finishes his investigation and does his work, that it's going to be proven that a lot of his findings are not in agreement with Horowitz's report, and Horowitz does not want to be embarrassed. So he wants to quietly do this, make these changes, so that when it all comes out and Durham finishes his work, that Horowitz, and it's proven that Horowitz, his IG report, missed a lot of things, got a lot of things wrong, Horowitz can come out and say, no, go over and look at the website. We actually, we made some, when we found out that the stuff was not accurate, we went ahead and modified it, changed it, corrected it, whatever. But you won't see him come in front of Congress or make an official statement, and obviously go to the website. They're hiding it. It should be in big, bold letters. And I think it'll have a lot to do with the predication. Remember, both Barr and Durham came out right after the report came out and said, hey, we disagree with Horowitz on the predication. And that's everything. That's everything. Why they did it. Why did they do it? And Horowitz gave him a pass, and Durham and Barr wouldn't have come out and said, hey, we disagree with that, unless they knew 100% for sure, and they had hard evidence that, in fact, that predication by Horowitz, that it was properly predicated, was incorrect. So he's probably learning now, through people at the Department of Justice, that, in fact, Barr and Durham weren't joking. And they've obviously got the evidence to prove it, and now Horowitz wants to save face. And, of course, I point out yesterday clear contradictions in the report about when the spying began. Yeah, there's a lot of things in the Horowitz report that are going to be proven to be false. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. You guys have a good day. See you. Bye.